You also visit the mosque event? Sorry? Did you visit the mosque event this time?
Well, I was actually not, I was on the other side of the country at the time. So
Where?
I was in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. California.
Yeah.
What were you doing, working?
I was not working, I was just taking a vacation.
Much needed vacation.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you work as?
I am a paralegal for immigration lawyer. Yourself.
I'm a digital marketing major.
Okay, so you're in school.
I did school online last year.
Okay, sounds good.
Social media, ads, marketing, all that stuff.
Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So last time we had talked about عام وخاص and mutlaq and muqayyid and the different strategies there are to bring the two texts together and how to really understand them and how to deal with them when we have differing texts or when we have unqualified and qualified texts. And this is a really important discussion. It gives a lot of insight on how we are supposed to deal with the Quran and the Sunnah. And why is it like this? Okay, so last time we had talked about freeing a slave, and one of the things that's important to keep in mind when we talk about this issue was that there are three different situations that have to do with freeing the slave, and we had talked about one of them was zihar, one of them was breaking an oath, and one of them was involuntary manslaughter. So what do you guys remember about these three situations? Can we get the light? Can you turn the light off? These lights. Just hit the switch.
Remember we had a big long discussion about like how you would apply voluntary manslaughter.
Sure.
Like traffic, good stuff. Didn't we say that it was like you have to pass for 3 days?
Right. So over here, each of these involves freeing a slave. Right. That was one of the rulings or one of the choices that was there, depending on what it is. Zihar, we said that this is basically when an individual or when a man, he keeps his wife, but he's never what?
Sleeping with her.
Right. He's never intimate with her. So this is a situation called zihar. And in order to compensate for the fact that you made this promise to perform zihar or to keep her but not be intimate with her, you had to free a slave. Breaking an oath, the same thing, you had to free a slave. And even the last one, involuntary manslaughter, you have to free a slave, with the difference being what between the three of these? Because all of them are freeing a slave, but what is unique about one? Yes.
I think one qualified and two unqualified.
Sure. So this one is qualified. And what was the qualification here? What kind of slave?
Muslim versus
Right. So it was a tahrir raqaba mu'mina. So over here, right here, right? Raqaba mu'mina, that it has to be a believer, right? It has to be a believing slave. So over here, there's a difference of opinion. Does this qualified statement apply to both of these unqualified statements? You guys remember? Right, there's khilaf, right? So there's a difference of opinion on whether this happens or when it applies. And I'll show you some examples on why this becomes difficult to apply in every single situation. The first of them, so we said the Hanafis and the Malikis, they say no, meaning that for them, for zihar and for breaking an oath, they said that it can be a non-Muslim slave. It's not a big deal. The Shafis, the Hanbalis, they say no, it has to be a believing slave because al-mutlaq yuhmal al-muqayyid. So here, this is one case study that I do want to talk about. Is here the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whatever is below the ankle is in the hellfire. and the hadith, and whoever drags their garment out of arrogance, Allah will not look at them on the day of judgment. So what are a couple rulings that we can take away from these hadith?
I'm not dressed arrogantly and showing off.
Okay, so arrogance for sure is not permissible. I think that's there. I don't think there's anybody who disagrees with that. But what about the first hadith?
Any clothing that goes beyond the ankle
Is in the hellfire. Yeah, so meaning that anything that's longer than the ankle is what? What is the ruling? It's haram.
And that's for male, correct?
This is for men, right? So over here, but the thing is, the scholars mentioned these two hadiths together. Why?
Because one of them is the wisdom behind the first ruling.
Not just what category? What category are we talking about? You guys forgot already? It's only been right. We're talking about mutlaq and muqayyad. We're talking about qualified and unqualified statements. So over here, where's the unqualified statement? The first one. Right, the first one is very general. Is it whatever is below the ankle is in the hellfire? But over here, the Prophet ﷺ, what does he say?
Out of arrogance.
Out of arrogance, right? So over here, I am taking the qualified statement to help me understand the unqualified one. And this is why you have all of the madhāhib. They say that below the ankles, it is, what is the ruling? Makruh, it's jais. It's actually permissible, right? There's nothing wrong with it. They all agree that what is haram though? Arrogance, right? Arrogance is by agreement, by ittifaq is haram, but just the fact that I have my pants long, this does not automatically qualify me as sinful. Here, there's a few verses that I want to share with you guys. That whoever cannot do so, then fast 3 days. And whoever of you is ill or traveling, then let him make up those missed days later. And whoever cannot do so, then let him fast 2 months continuously. So over here, you have 3 different rulings, but you have all of them involve fasting as the hukum. So what kind of example is this? So this verse and this verse and this verse. These are 3 verses here. Which one of these are qualified and which one of these are unqualified?
The second one is qualified.
Okay. And
Because it's more in depth of like traveling
Tayyib.
and ill, but the first one just says whoever cannot do so.
Okay.
The third one, unqualified.
Okay. I'm just listening.
I'd say, yeah, similar ruling, but like similar reasons.
So they're all of these are making up fast, right? Tayyib. What is the difference?
Well, the third one's obviously
Ah.
specifically,
Yeah,
it's continuous.
it's continuous.
Consecutive, tells you
Yeah.
what kind of day.
Mutatabi'ain, right? It has to be continuous. What does continuous mean? Consecutively, one after another. So when we talk about the ruling here, fasting for 3 days or making up those missed days later, if I was of the opinion that al-mutlaq yuhmal al-muqayyad, that the qualified is always used to understand the unqualified, that means that how do I make up these 3 days? Consecutively. And over here, any days I missed, I have to make them up consecutively. Do you guys understand the problem? Why it doesn't always apply? It doesn't always work. There are situations where it does, and there are situations where it does not. Over here, what can the reasoning be? How can if someone says to me, no, I'm sorry, Yahi, you have to understand the qualified, the unqualified with the qualified statement. How can I respond to them using these verses? Or I don't have a response, and they're right.
We have a question. So the second statement, if you're traveling and you make up that this is from Ramadan.
This is Ramadan, yes.
So does that have to be continuous? Or,
That's what I'm asking.
and that I'd say
That is the question.
In that case, no.
It is not. But over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that he has to fast 2 months consecutively.
But that's like a specific case.
I think that's different.
It's a different what?
Qualification. Okay, the ones you missed in Ramadan, right? And you make it up later. Mashi. And over here, same thing. Yes. Over here, whatever. What happened here?
That's in a different situation.
Right, this is a different situation altogether. So that's the answer, right? These are completely different situations. So I cannot use the continuity, or I cannot use the mutlaq to apply to the muqayyad. I mean, I can't use the muqayyad to apply to the mutlaq, right? It's not going to work. And the reason for that is because the reasoning for them is completely separate and it is completely different.
I should.
Sure.
Thankful. So you said all of them say it's makruh, or
Yeah.
all of them say it's permissible?
So it's between makruh and permissible.
Okay.
So the one who cannot do it, they leave it 2 months.
No, 2 months, this is different. This is for somebody who, the one who kills somebody accidentally, involuntary manslaughter, has 2 months. And also, no, but I don't think it's consecutive in that situation. Oh, no, it is consecutive. And also for the one who is intimate with his wife in the day of Ramadan. Yeah, that's the punishment. He has to fast 2 months consecutively. Yeah. Any day. Yep. Any day until when? Until the next Ramadan, right? So it's not like any day, like, oh, khalas, I'll make it in like 2 years, right? It has to be until the next Ramadan. Huh? Well, I mean, inshallah. Aisha radiallahu anha, when did she make up her fasts? Right, Aisha radiallahu anha, she made up her fast in Shāban. Shāban is when? Before Ramadan, and she delayed them up until then. So, is it better? Maybe. I hope so. Allah musta'an. So over here, mutlaq expressions are interpreted in accordance with those that are qualified by some attribute. There has to be something shared, right? There has to be something shared in order for this to apply. For example, the word slave is qualified by the attribute of faith in some passages, but is unqualified in others. So the unqualified passages are interpreted in accordance with the qualified ones, meaning that he's saying that it applies. He's saying that he's applied. Why? Because Imam al-Haramain was what? What madhab? No, he's Shāfi. He's Shāfi. I'll guide you guys. Clarity and ambiguity. So over here, we're going to talk about and mujmal and what's is it mujmal and mujmal and mubayyin? I'm sorry. Yeah, mujmal and mubayyin. So clarity and ambiguity. So over here, unclear speech or mujmal is that which requires clarification or a bayan. Clarification means removing something from the realm of obscure speech into the realm of clear speech. So if something is not clear, the moment I use something to clarify it, this is called the bayan. And the text now becomes mubayyin. Explicit speech or Nass is that which can only have a single meaning. It has also been defined saying its interpretation is its revelation, meaning the way it came is the way that is meant to be understood. The word is derived from minassa or seat of honor of the bride. So it's actually not derived from this word. This word is one of the, it's actually the other way around. Nassa is the root and minassa is this. The only reason he's bringing it is to show it as an example, because what is the seat of the bride? What does that mean? Why is that important? Or how is that related to the meaning of the word?
It's reserved.
Huh? Okay, reserved. Okay, what else? What is unique about that seat?
It's clear.
Right, it's clear, right? You can, meaning that if I walk into the wedding hall, am I going to be like, oh, which one's the bride? Huh? No, why?
It will be clear.
Right, it's going to be clear. It's going to be up on a stage. It's going to be in a higher position, right? It's going to be more decorated than the other seats. And that clarity, right? So do you understand the connection?
Something obvious.
Something that's very obvious, something that's very clear, right? When I walk in, I'm going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, obviously that's the bride, right? So there's no ambiguity. There's nothing mujmal about that. So vagueness can be in different ways. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wa aqimus salah. Is that clear or ambiguous? Okay.
Yes and no. It's vague because you don't know which prayer.
You don't know the details, right? So over here, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us the number of rak'ah? Does he tell us the times of the prayer? Or the days of the prayer or the numbers? You know what I mean? So all of this would be considered vague. This would be considered mujmal. Where is the mubayyin? Where is the thing that clarifies it? In the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So over here, it says, "Kulu min thamarihi idh athmara wa atu haqqahu yawm hasad." So when they bear fruit, eat some of it, paying what is due on the day of harvest. So over here, is this vague or clear? This is vague. What is the clarity that is needed? What are some of the questions that come? If I just came and I read this verse, what questions would I ask?
So, what will bear the fruit? Is it
okay?
Actually, the many deeds.
So number one, does this?
How much is due to pay?
Sure, how much is due, right? This is something that's important. So if it is naturally irrigated, then I have to pay 1/5. If it is artificially irrigated, I have to pay 1/10. Meaning if it's naturally irrigated, I have to pay more. And if I irrigate it, I have to pay less. And Yom Hasad, the day of harvest, that's clear. Meaning every time I harvest, I have to give a percentage out for the zakat. Like every fruit,
I think so.
no. It is only non-perishable fruits. I would not give zakat on apples. I would not give zakat on grapes. Well, grapes, no, I wouldn't. Raisins, yes. Why? It has to be a non-perishable item. Yes.
Is the Arabic word for food like similar to what the English understanding of food is? It doesn't mean just like
Yeah, yeah.
vegetation.
Yeah. So it could be anything, like basically anything that grows and can be consumed.
Oh, so like tomatoes?
So, but that's the thing. Over here, it doesn't mean all fruits.
Okay.
These are only fruits that are non-perishable.
It's like dates.
Like so dates, right? Because dates you can store long term. Raisins you can store long term. Even barley you would pay on this.
That in the tafsir or in the hadith?
You would find this. Where would you find it? And you find it in the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So someone might ask, all right, well, if I have an apple farm or I have an orange farm, or if I grow cucumbers and vegetables, how would I pay? Like if you're saying I don't have to pay zakat on this, then how is zakat paid on this? Is it a zakat loophole? Why? Because of the sale, right? So over here, just the taxation brackets are different. So the way that non-perishable items are taxed is very different from the way that perishable items are taxed. And why? Because what is different between the two? So if I have a date farm versus an orange farm, what is one of the big differences? Time-wise, it's not too. Oranges are perishable. Like, so I'm taking a huge risk with oranges in that if I don't sell them in time, what happens? They rot. Versus dates, right? They can last significantly longer, right? Dates can last significantly longer, which is why that risk is calculated in, and which is why it's taxed differently or why it's zakated differently than non-perishable things. Al-mayta. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ. Like I have made impermissible for you the dead. Is that clear or ambiguous? It's vague. Why?
Because you can eat dead fish.
Okay, good. So there are certain types of things that I can eat that have died of natural causes. What else?
And the length of when it died.
Yani, meaning what?
Like if it died fresh, it died like 1 hour ago, 1 week ago.
So if the animal dies in front of me, I can eat it.
No.
No? Then what? What are you trying to say?
Also, it doesn't say dead. What is it? Dead plant or animal or?
Oh, I mean, in general, it means animals. Animals. It has to do with animals. Yes. Yes. It's the same verse, right? So when I slaughter an animal, is it dead or living?
Yeah.
It's dead, right? Can I eat it?
Yeah.
But so it depends. So over here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says meta, it means anything that has died from what? Other than slaughter, right? Anything that died from other than slaughter is not permissible to eat. So for example, if I'm driving and bam, somebody hits a deer and the deer dies, can I be like, all right, free meat? Why?
Because it's not.
Because it wasn't slaughtered, right? It wasn't slaughtered. But there are two main ways to slaughter. How do I slaughter domesticated animals? No, you don't chop the head off.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's no. No. It doesn't render the animal haram, but how in general how do Muslims slaughter without chopping that off? Sure. What is the ritual?
Or do you like cut the throat?
Right, you slit the throat. Right, you slit the throat. You slit the throat with the idea
From the jugular.
to cut the jugulars, right? To cut the jugulars and the what is it? Carotids. Yeah, the carotids. So you cut the jugulars and the carotid. Why? Because most of the blood from the animal will spill at that point. Does it have to be a cut like this? No, right? So for example, camel neck bones, they go like this, right? They go up and down. Our neck bones, they go like this. So it makes sense to cut like that. Well, not us, but I'm saying like sheep and goats and all these other, all these other animals, their neck bones are very similar to ours. Like they run like this. So when I cut like this, I can actually go between the bone. But if my bone is running like this, can I cut like that? No. So what they actually use a spear, right? They use a spear to pierce the camel, and it causes the blood flow. Hey, what about wild animals? How do I slaughter wild animals? With hunting. So meaning what? That, right? So I can use a falcon, I can use a dog, right? If I have, right, I can, boom, I shoot it with a rifle, I say Bismillah, and I shoot it and the animal dies. Can I eat it? Yes, right. That's the slaughter of wild animals. That's how you slaughter wild animals. Yeah, you say Bismillah when you shoot. You take Allah's name basically when you shoot. No, you don't have to say that. No, even that was when the Prophet was in battle. Fish you don't need to slaughter fish, right? So fish, they actually, how do fish die? Like when, right? They suffocate, right? Or they asphyxiate. Masakin, right? They're so bad. So there are different ways to kill different animals, but you don't have to slaughter fish, right? Fish don't need to be slaughtered versus domesticated land animals. So over here, what is the tool that explains vagueness? It's called bayan. Bayan. So this tool that explains this thing that is vague, it is called bayan. Bayan can come in the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It can come sometimes comes in the statements of the companions. It can come in different fatwa. It can come in different forms, and that can either be in speech or in action. It can either be in speech or in action. So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Yani, pray as if you pray as you see me praying. That's okay. Sorry, I had a brain fart. So, pray as you see me praying. Pray as you see me praying. Meaning what? When Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, "Aqimus salah," that's the explanation of it. And did he have to say anything? No, right? He didn't say, okay, now I'm going into ruku'. Now I'm coming up and standing in qiyam. Now I'm going to sajda, right? So what did he do? All he did was acted it out. Here, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْأُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ, and complete hajj and umrah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But are the rights of hajj and umrah mentioned in totality in the Quran? No. So what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He says, خُذُوا عَنِّي مَنَاسِكَكُمْ. Take from me the rights of hajj. Learn from me the rights of hajj. Again, these are all actions showing on how all of these things are to be done. Any questions on any of these? So here, this is explicit, right? This is Nass. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say, Allah is one, He is alone. Can someone be like, well, that actually means three? Right? No, it's right. Yeah, some could, right? May Allah guide them. So it's not possible to understand this in any other way than the apparent meaning. Now, can someone say that there are other? Yes, they can, but we'll talk about why that's problematic. Right? We'll talk about why that's problematic. Over here, أيها الناس قد فرض عليكم الحج فحجوا. O people, Hajj has been ordered upon you, so make Hajj. Any vagueness in this claim? Any vagueness in this statement? No, it's very clear. And the last one, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَإِطْعَامُ سِتِّينَ مِسْكِينًا, and whoever is not able to, then he should feed 60 poor people. He should feed 60 poor. Can someone be like, well, this actually means 12? Do you understand? In a lot of times you will have clarity with such things that when they mention numbers, right? Yes, go ahead.
What about 70?
So 70 is a little bit different, but the thing is you don't find such statements that have to do with 7 or 70 for specific rulings. Right. So over here, for example, whoever can't, that they should feed 60. Nobody can be like, well, 60 actually means a lot. So if I feed 20 people, it's good. Do you understand? Yeah. So it's not open to interpretation. And what do we mean by not open to interpretation? Meaning that it's not open to any other logical or rational interpretation. Because I can interpret this however I want. So over here, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually telling us that chicken is not permissible to eat. You know what I mean? I can come up with all kinds of crazy interpretations for things, but what is the thing that actually connects me back to the Nass? What allows me, or what
How come when you say Qul huwallahu ahad, you say, well, Allah is saying, say Allah is one. How come I can't come to you and be like, no, Allah is saying chickens are haram? What would a response be to this?
It's not open to interpretation.
It's not open to interpretation. Why? Okay, so it's well, taqyid is done right. This is a literal text, but just in general, when we speak and when we use words, those words have what? They have meaning. And in order for me to understand the meaning of a word, what should I do? Huh? Look it up. Good. Where do I look it up?
Dictionary.
I look it up in a dictionary. Huh? Or tafsir. But even tafsir, right? A lot of them, they rely on the Arabic language. A lot of them, they rely on the Arabic language. It's important for us to understand that there are limited uses, the limited understandings of many terms. There are limited understandings of many texts. We can't just open up to blatant understanding. And this is something that we're going to talk about, which is, so over here, inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra. So for example, we have sent down the reminder. Is it permissible for me to understand this we, because this is how it's used in Arabic? Like for Arabic, for the singular, you say ana. For plural, we use nahnu. Is it permissible for me now to say, okay, well, no, there's actually a set of gods because your Quran says so?
No, this is the we of
Huh? The ta'lim, right? So, right, this is called the royal we, right? This is called the royal we. And you have individuals who talk like we decided that this such and such and such, meaning that I, as an individual, I decided these things, and it's completely reasonable. It's fine. Again, this is a this is a linguistic tool, right? This is a linguistic tool that people use to talk or mention things. The next thing here, apparent and interpreted. So here we have a couple things. You have zahir and mu'awwal. So there is an apparent understanding and there is a interpreted understanding. So if anything carries two meanings, or more sometimes, then it is with one meaning more likely than the other. That is what is called mu'awwal. So it may be interpreted figuratively if there's supporting evidence. This is called apparent due to the proof, which is al-zahir. So here, basically, if I have an apparent meaning, I am obligated to understand it literally. So any text, any verse, any hadith that I come across, the first understanding that I have to take away from it is what? Is literal. Unless there is a supporting evidence. Unless there is a supporting evidence. So if there's a supporting evidence, then I am allowed to, at that point, do what? To interpret. Right? I can do ta'wil. I can do ta'wil at that point, and I'll bring some examples. So over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الظُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ, and lower your wing in humility.
That's a big expression, like, humble and kind of thing.
No, well, like, why don't you lower your wing? Like when I see my parent, like, why don't I just, you know what I mean? Just khalas. Like, every time I see them, I just put my hand down. How do you know that that's not the apparent meaning? We don't have wings, like number one, right? That's the clearest understanding that we don't have wings. Also, what you mentioned, that this is a what? This is a figure of speech. How do I know that this is a figure of speech?
Because we have example or evidence.
Sure, we have evidence. Where's the evidence?
Humility.
Huh? I'm sorry? Well, no, for sure. Like, I definitely agree with that. But I'm saying the fact that this is a method, or the fact that this is a statement, how do I know it's a statement, or how do I know this is how the Arabs spoke?
It's a culture and norm.
Okay, how do I determine that? I have to go back to the poetry, right? Because the thing is, we have to understand there's an entire literature before Quran, yes? Right? You know, did the Quran invent Arabic? No, right? It's not, this isn't the first Arabic or piece of Arabic that the Arabs had been exposed to. They had an entire literature that was there. All I have to do is go back. All I have to do is go back and look in their literature, and I will find this statement being used to show what?
Humility.
To show humility or to show mercy. Over here, وَكُلُّ إِنسَانُ أَلْزَمْنَاهُ طَائِرُ فِي أُنُقِهِ, that we have bound each human being's bird to his neck. What do you think? I purposely translated it literally. This is not, if you look in any translation, you will not find this.
It's like a parable.
Sure, okay, it's a parable for what? What did the Arabs use the birds for in their time? Huh? Not just hunting.
Exploring.
GPS.
Messages.
No, man. Right, yeah, you have messages. You have messages on your neck. Like we're gonna be tatted up on Yom Al-Qiyamah, man. Come on, man. Huh? Huh? Not. Okay, Dave, you're getting close. Okay, you're getting a little bit closer. Let's take more of a spiritual meaning. Huh? They use them for omens. Right? They use them for omens, right? It was very common for them to use birds as omens. So how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using it here? Meaning that all of the things that you put forward, all of the actions that you do, they'll be where? Am I physically going to be carrying them on my neck? Right? They're going to be in my book. But this idea of carrying something on my neck, this is an expression of what? Of responsibility and burden. Ahsan. Right? Anytime we even use it, like, so you guys see a lot of similarities in English, right? It's not strange. Even for us in English, we're very familiar with many of these phrases. We're familiar with many of these idioms, that when we say that I'm carrying something on my neck, it means that I'm carrying a responsibility or I'm carrying a burden. So what is the burden that we're carrying? We're carrying the deeds that we have put forward, and this is exactly what it means here. Over here, وَلَا تَقْرُبُوهُنَّ حَتَّى يُطَهِّرْنَ, that do not approach them until they are cleansed. Meaning that if somebody's wife is on their cycle and she comes near here, whoa, is that how it should be? Then what? What is intended here? Is intimacy. It's talking very clearly about intimacy. But again, this is the apparent meaning doesn't say that. The apparent meaning means that I have to maintain a physical distance, right? Yeah, so I have to socially distance from my wife, right? But that's not what the meaning is here. Very clearly, this is not what the intended meaning is here. I'm sorry.
There's a similar one on the
Yeah. So yes, I agree. So over here, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا, it is no offense to circulate between the two. So here it's talking about Safa and Marwa. Over here it's saying there's no offense. Yani it's not a problem to make sa'i between Safa and Marwa. Is that what's intended? For Umrah, will my Umrah or my Hajj be complete if I don't make sa'i, if I don't go between Safa and Marwa? No, it'll be incomplete. So over here, clearly that's not what's intended, meaning that this was a problem for the pagan Arabs. This was a problem for the pagan Arabs, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, like, no, this is not an issue. This is not an issue. This is actually not only is it not a problem, but you must do it. You must do it. So do you guys understand so even the proofs that we had talked about, so we said that requires evidence. Does that evidence need to come from a hadith, or does it need to come from another verse? Where does the evidence come from in these situations? Right, so like the tradition or the customs, the language, from poetry. So you have to understand that this idea of giving context to things, this idea of giving us understanding to things, it's not necessary that we just stick to our Nass. It's not necessary that we just stick to the Quran and stick to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we actually go back to the Arabic language to give us context, to help us understand that. And why is it? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what language did He reveal His book in? In Arabic. Not only did He reveal it in Arabic, what kind of Arabic did He reveal it in? Well, it's classical to us, right?
Well, even to them, some people have given to them.
Right. I mean, Allahu Akbar, huh? No, he revealed it to them in the way that they spoke, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't come with a new formation. He came with a way that was familiar to them, familiar enough for them to understand, like, okay, this is not how humans speak, right? It was familiar enough to them that they understood that this way that these words are put together and the way that these sentences are formed, this is something that is clearly divine. This is not something that a human actually can produce. Over here, the Prophet ﷺ said, set the rows in order, stand shoulder to shoulder, close the gaps, be pliant in the hands of your brethren, and do not leave openings for the devil. If anyone joins up a row, Allah will join him. But if anyone breaks a row, Allah will cut him off. And this is a very common hadith that many brothers and sisters use to mean what? Okay, to what extent? Okay, so get up, David. So over here, if I take the literal understanding of this hadith, how am I supposed to stand next to David? First, shoulder to shoulder, like this, right? Tayyib. All of the madhāhib, they say that you don't have to. Why?
Tafadhal, jazakallah. Thank you. Why?
They agree that there shouldn't be like an obvious space, but you shouldn't.
Okay, even if you have a little gap,
Oh,
no one's going to. How come? How can you guys reject you hadith rejectors? Is anybody rejecting the hadith? Tayyib, how? How can they say this? How can they allow this?
That's not, oh wait, this isn't the, that's not the apparent.
That's not because it's not the apparent meaning. It's not the literal meaning. So what is the understood meaning?
Be close to each other.
Be close. Be close and stand. Stand next to each other and stand what? Should I stand like this and like this, like zigzag? No, I have to straighten my rows. All of this is just an understanding and is a figurative way to express that we should stand straight and stand close to each other. And how do I know that? Look at the next hadith. Now, both of these are in Abu Dawud and both of them are in the same list of a hadith, by the way. He says, the Prophet ﷺ said, stand close together in your rows, bring them near one another and stand neck to neck. Huh? Because you don't know how, because it's impossible, because you don't know how to pray. No, I'm saying like, so over here, it's very clear. It's very clear. How could the Prophet ﷺ ask for something impossible? Because he didn't mean it what? Literally. He didn't mean it literally. He didn't mean it literally. And there's another set of problems that come to this. When am I supposed to do all of these things? At one point, before or after the prayer starts? Before the prayer starts. Like, do any of these talk about after the prayer starts? Then why are people playing footsies during salah? I don't understand. I don't understand. So like again, Dawood, these are he's our model prayer. So over here, like during the prayer, this is happening. You have people constantly shifting. When did this say to do this during salah? When am I supposed to straighten the rows? Before the prayer begins. Not during, because if I'm doing this during the prayer, what am I doing? I'm not focusing on my prayer. I'm focusing on my position. It's extremely problematic. This is what happens when you misunderstand the text. This is what happens when you don't study uṣūl, right? When you don't study legal theory and understand how do I deal with the ayat, how do I deal with the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I will have all of these misunderstandings and I will make it difficult for myself and I'll make it uncomfortable for the person next to me. Yes.
So is it understood in different cultures to do something a little bit different?
None of them.
This because some women will insist on touching their feet.
Yeah.
It's really awkward.
It's awkward. Sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So I'll be standing and then somebody will be like digging their pinky toe into my foot. No,
Well, sometimes you're too far
and you're
apart.
too far. No, but I'm saying like the too far apart, you do the best that you can before prayer starts to what? To close the gaps, right? And the thing is, if the gap next to me isn't far and most of the women are there, what do? So for example, Miguel, our new musalli of the evening. So for example, he's praying here, right? He's praying here and I'm praying here. And everybody starts lining up next to him. What should I do? Just get closer, right? I'm doing it enough where my prayer isn't being disturbed at that point. But during the prayer, I'm already close to the brother. And I'm making efforts to draw ever near to, you know what I mean? Like I'm boxing him out. Like this is not how the prayer is supposed to be. I'm supposed to busy myself with prayer and focusing on the salah, right? Khushur by agreement. Khushur by agreement. Like, you know, focusing on the prayer is an obligation by ijma'. Having khushur or having humility and focus in the prayer by agreement is an obligation. And do we fall short in that? Yeah, you know, many times we'll get distracted, but we do the best that we can. All of these things, like, you know, playing around, moving around, like half of Surah Al-Fatiha will have been recited by the Imam, and this guy is still sitting there fixing his feet. I don't understand. I really don't get it. And may Allah guide us. Huh? Yes. Yeah. Just stay in your place. There's no reason to like go and shift around and move around. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Even so here, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, don't leave openings for the devil. And he explains this. He says, if anybody joins a row, Allah will join him. If anyone breaks a row, like if I'm there and I didn't move, did I break a row? No. Breaking a row is if you're standing, and we'll use it again. If I'm praying and all of a sudden Miguel, he comes and he joins, I'm like, oh man.
Oh,
Do you understand the problem? Like by me moving away, this creates an issue and this creates a problem. I'm sorry. So this creates a problem, this creates an issue. But if I'm coming and I'm joining the rows, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. But sitting there and like playing Jenga and like, moving around and like shifting, this is not part of the prayer. Yes.
What if he ate a lot of onion and garlic?
So it depends, right? Is it enough that you're just not going to focus on your prayer? I remember, subhanAllah, and one of my friends got really mad at me for this. We went for prayer and I joined the saf and there was like a homeless guy next to me. And I didn't realize it. And he smelled horrible, like just like horrible to the point where I was like, I'm not going to be able to focus on my prayer. So before the prayer started, I moved back. And one of my friends moved forward and the imam was like, Allahu Akbar. And after prayer, he's like, I hate you. I was like, bro, I was in the first row. There's a reason that I left. Like we strive to pray in the first row. And if you see me leaving, that means there's some problem. There's an issue there. And there's a reason I didn't continue praying because I knew I'd be distracted. And he's like, man, when he burped, it was, oh man, I felt like throwing up. So the thing is like, we have to understand, like there are situations where if I'm so distracted and I'm not focused on the prayer at all, like for example, if I have a child that is screaming her lungs out, right? I'm praying, child's screaming. No, not just, does it make sense for me to continue?
No.
I'm not focusing on my prayer. Am I helping anyone else focus on their prayer? No, not at all, right? Everybody's getting distracted. And the advice I usually give is like, hey, listen, pick up your kid, calm him down. If he's calm, welcome to join the prayer and try again. And if he starts screaming again, you know what? Pick him up again. You know what I mean? Like you keep trying. You'll have good days and you'll have bad days. That's just how it is. This is how we train our children, right? This is how we train our children. But do we train our children at the expense of the jama'ah, at the expense of the congregation? It's like, the kids like, "Wah!" And you're like, you know what I mean? You're like, nah, I'm in the zone. And that's all that matters. No, this is not fair to the jama'ah. It's not fair to the congregation. And the additional layer to this that I think needs to be discussed is the involvement of both parents, right? So many times the responsibility is entirely dumped on the mother. I can understand this for newborns, right? Like a father can't feed the child, right? He just physically can't. He doesn't have that ability. And depending on how the setup is in the house, this can play a major role in that. But after the newborn stage, like why aren't fathers taking more active roles? I don't get it. I really don't understand. And their responsibility is entirely dumped on the mothers. But may Allah guide us.
I have a question about the
Yeah.
You said it's obligatory, so like
Yes.
to what extent? Like
The best you can.
the best you can.
Yeah, the best you can.
I've heard some people say
Yeah.
it's good not to make any attempt. If you make no attempt at all.
That makes sense, right? Because if it's an obligation, not doing it is what? Is a sin. So actions of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the next section, inshallah, that we'll be getting into. How to deal with them. Like when the Prophet ﷺ, he does something, is it an obligation? Is it something that we're supposed to stay away from? Is, depending on how it is, inshallah, we'll talk more about this next time. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Allahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin, nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi sahbihi wasallam. We'll stop here, inshallah. If you guys have any questions, we still have a few minutes until the next class. Any unrelated questions? No. Anybody go to, yes, totally.
You blew my mind when you said that you didn't have to stand right next to each other because
Hmm.
the masjid I went to growing up
Yeah.
did not start the salah.
Oh, they wouldn't. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you have people who deal with these things in different levels, and how literal people are is how problematic many things and many issues become. Because even with these just quick examples that I shared with you, it's very clear that not all texts are meant to be taken what? Literally, right? And there are clear examples of that. And if we understand that there are some texts that you don't take literally, that means that there's a chance that there are other texts that you don't take literally. And if we can find a way to really help us understand and deal with it, then this is something that we definitely should do. Like we shouldn't take things literally. Yeah.
Can you discuss when you come like after the prayer started? I see some women will go to the right, the far right.
Yeah.
And another one will go to the far left.
Okay. So in an ideal situation, the rows of the men and women, they form differently. For the men, how should the row start? It starts in the center, immediately behind the imam. Behind the imam, And then from there, the row is to be formed with preference given to right. So, and not just that, after the first row is complete, what happens? The second row, and so on and so forth, right? It starts from the center, it moves out. Third row starts from the center and moves out. Make sense? Okay. So for the women, how does it work? Where does it start? Right, left, center? Nobody knows.
I just follow the guy, the men.
Okay. So the men, the meaning that you start from the center. Tayyib. Where? So if the women have a prayer area, or if it's an open area, where do they start their row? Closer to the men or further from the men? Further. So the rows of the women, like the men, it goes from front to back. For women, it goes back to front. Okay. So here, this is ideal, right? So you have, yeah, yeah, in front, exactly. So you know how I was saying. So basically, the row fills, next row fills, next row. For the women, row fills, next row in front of it. Yes, and they just keep moving forward. So basically, the latest line that is formed for the men will be furthest or closest to the women. Closest, right? And the same thing for the women. The latest line to form for the women will be closest to the men. So you actually have a hadith about this, is that where you had this young man and this young woman, they really loved each other. So what would they do? They would come late. Why would they come late? so they can see each other. So they can see each other doing. Listen, like in the Masjid Nabawi, like, so the thing is, people are, oh, it was a different time. No, like they had problems just like we had problems. The only difference being that they were more sincere than us. Radiallahu anhum ajma'in. So this is an ideal situation. Tayyib. What if I have a situation where there's only one entrance on the left side of the prayer hall? Then how should I line up? Opposite side, right? So I should start all the way to the right, and I should start filling the row like this. Because if I start filling from the middle, what happens? They can't see, like a lot of women, they don't see, and they assume that the row is full. Does that make sense? So the thing is, even with the men, this would apply. So the thing is, again, if there are logistic constraints, then what should you do? You should take those logistic constraints into account. Or if you have, for example, like the women's prayer area upstairs for us, where's the door? There are two doors, but it's usually only one door that's used, right? So the other one doesn't really get used. So if you have a predominantly used door or entrance and you have a fixed area, what is probably the best way for them to line up here? So either they have a choice, right? So either they can go all the way to the front corner and line up just like men line up. Why? Because they have a fixed space. Or and what is the benefit of that? Why would they line up in the front versus starting in the back?
So people coming after, right? So you can see.
Okay, seeing who can, like, seeing what? You can see the imam, right? This is a big thing. When you have a big open space, if I'm praying in the back or if I'm praying in the front, I can still see the men in front of me. But the problem is, if I'm praying in the women's area upstairs and I'm praying all the way in the back, if the mic cuts out, can I see? No, I can't. So this is one of the reasons it's important to have that. And also it allows for the women to come in to see that there's space, right? To see that there's space. So again, taking logistic constraints into account when we form these lines is something that is really important. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of education on how to do this and how the women should line up in general. Like I've seen a huge lacking in this. I remember one time there was, so when we were doing social distancing, the prayer area fills up very quickly, right? It would fill up very quickly and it wasn't even that many people. So what would happen is the front prayer area would get full and then immediately they would shift to the back prayer area. There are some women who had come in and they saw men praying in the front. So what did they do? They went into the back musalla and they prayed where? In the front or the back of the musalla? No, they went to the front of the musalla. So as soon as the row started filling up, what happened? The men started walking in, right? Men started walking in and all of a sudden they see like these 3-4 women praying. And like, they were like, one of the women, like, well, she broke her prayer and she went to the back and then she joined the Jama'ah again. Other women, no, they're like, we're praying. Like, you know what I mean? Like we started our prayer and we're not gonna end it. And at the end of the day, why is this? Because there's no instructions, right? There are no instructions on the way that these things are supposed to be formed and how these lines are supposed to be formed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and allow us to, give more instruction. This is something that's really important and it minimizes problems in a lot of these spaces. Yes.
So there's no preference to right or left for the women?
In general, there's always going to be a preference to the right. right? And again, this is when in ideal circumstances. So if we just have like a big open area, like for example, if we only had 50 people and we were praying in just in this space, then I would say in this space, yeah, you give preference to the right. And it's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because it's an open space and we don't have those logistical constrictions. Any other questions? Khlas. I'll see you guys inshallah in about 15 minutes for the tazkiyah class. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك.